Under the red glow of the moon, a massive bear-like monster rips through its prey, snarling that it needs more. It towers over the apartment complex, a mindless engine of destruction in the night. With blood dripping from its fangs, the beast vows to slaughter every last one of them. Miles away, Choi Hyungjin falls through a void of purple energy, screaming as he's yanked from the jaws of death. He hits the floor of a quiet hallway, gasping for air and realizing he somehow survived. Still shaking from the near-death experience, he looks up to see a pair of legs standing right in front of him. It's Jae-hyun, reaching out a hand to help his newest vassal back to his feet. He'd been watching the whole time through his ultimate eyes, waiting for the perfect moment to trigger the summon. The adrenaline wears off, and Hyungjin suddenly feels the searing pain from the deep gash on his leg. Jae-hyun checks on him, but the guy is too confused to even process how he got there. The wound is bad. A jagged tear that's pouring blood onto the floor tiles. Jae-hyun realizes he needs to start stocking up on medical supplies if he's going to keep his people alive. He tells Hyungjin to wait there for a moment and heads back into his apartment. He pulls out a professional-grade medical chest, packed with everything from bandages to surgical tools. Seeing the kit reminds him of his mother, who used to look after him with that same gentle care when he was a kid. He spreads out the supplies on the floor, but he quickly hits a logistical snag. He only has 40 inventory slots, so he can't just carry all this loose gear around with him. Then, he realizes he doesn't have to carry them individually. He reaches for the entire chest at once. The system dings. He can reclaim the whole first aid kit for the price of over 77,000 won. He brings the heavy case back out to the hallway, setting it down with a thud. He kneels down next to Hyungjin, asking to see exactly where the monster got him. Despite his friend's protests, Jae-hyun peels back the torn fabric to get a better look at the injury. He grabs a pair of tweezers and some antiseptic, telling him they need to disinfect the cut immediately. He starts dabbing at the raw wound, working as carefully and steadily as he can. Hyungjin winces and grits his teeth, trying his best not to scream as the medicine stings. Once the bandage is finally secure, the poor guy lets out a long breath and thanks him. Jae-hyun packs up his tools, his mind already shifting back to the chaos happening on the floors below. He tells Hyungjin to stay here and rest while he goes to handle some other business. He closes his eyes for a second, focusing his energy for what comes next. When he opens them, they glow with a haunting purple light as he activates his ultimate eyes. His vision pierces through the floors, descending deep into the building's basement levels. He tracks the movement between the first floor and the basement, pinpointing where the fighting is thickest. A female archer draws her bow, letting a glowing arrow fly through the gloom. The projectile punches straight through a goblin's skull, sending dark blood spraying against the wall. From the floor above, Moon Byung-go shouts for Deoksu to run and lead them into the trap. Deoksu sprints down the stairs, a whole swarm of snarling goblins hot on his heels. He's acting as the bait, leading the monsters right into a bottleneck where the team can pick them off. He glances back, seeing the pack close enough to reach out and grab him. Two of the creatures leap from the shadows, claws extended for a killing blow. But Byung-go is faster. He steps into the fray with a roar, his eyes fixed on the target. With one clean, powerful swing of his blade, he cleaves through a goblin, ending the chase in a spray of gore. Byung-go is a whirlwind of steel, cutting through the horde while his teammates watch from the stairs in total disbelief. Another goblin falls, its head cleanly severed by a single precise strike from his blade. His allies can hardly believe their eyes. Byung-go was never this strong or fast before he joined up with Jae-hyun. Upstairs, Jae-hyun watches the feed through his ultimate eyes, satisfied to see his investment paying off so quickly. A cold smile plays on his lips as he realizes that turning Byung-go into a vassal was the smartest move he's made yet. Down in the chaos, Byung-go finishes off another monster, green blood spraying everywhere as the group prepares for the next phase. Jiyeon is already in position, crouching by the power lines and waiting for the signal to throw the switch. The rest of the team signals that they're ready, having set the stage for a massive environmental trap. Byung-go leaps down the final flight of stairs, shouting for the team to get clear as the swarm of goblins pours after him. He deftly clears the makeshift barricades, leading the mindless monsters exactly where he wants them. The trap is set in a narrow stairwell where there's nowhere for the horde to run. On command, they tip a massive water tank, sending a wall of water crashing down into the confined space. The goblins are caught completely off guard, swept off their feet by the sheer force of the flood. They struggle against the current, but they're now completely soaked and trapped in the bottleneck. Byung-go roars for Jiyeon to pull the trigger before the monsters can recover. With a determined shout, Jiyeon slams his thumb down on the red power switch. High-voltage cables submerged in the floodwater instantly spark to life, turning the entire stairwell into a giant circuit. The goblins don't even have time to scream before the electricity cooks them where they stand. Back in the safety of his room, Jae-hyun's eyes flare with an intense purple light as he prepares to unleash a skill of his own. The The strain of the massive mana output causes him to hunch over, sweat dripping from his face as the energy reaches a boiling point. A sphere of crackling purple energy erupts from his body, rapidly expanding to fill the entire apartment. The pulse of power passes through the walls and floors like they aren't even there, seeking out every remaining hostile in the building. The surviving goblins in the lower levels are suddenly bathed in the eerie purple glow, frozen in terror. Their bodies begin to disintegrate under the sheer pressure of Jaehyun's mana, their screams cut short by the void. With one final blinding flash, the floor is scrubbed clean of life, leaving nothing but dust and shadows behind. A pack of goblins wanders through the basement, completely unaware of what's watching them. They're just looking for their next meal, totally oblivious. One of them stops suddenly, catching a scent in the air. A massive shadow looms over them from the darkness, eyes glowing red. The beast roars, revealing rows of lethal fangs. It lunges forward, sinking its teeth right into the lead goblin. The rest of the group scrambles in a panic. But the beast is a blur of motion, charging straight through them. It's a total bloodbath as the creature tears them apart. Goblins are getting shredded before they can even think about fighting back. The monster is relentless, crushing anything in its path. They're completely outmatched by its raw primal strength. One heavy blow sends a body flying across the room. The survivors can only shriek in terror as they're cornered. A massive claw sweep clears the area in one motion. The beast sinks its teeth into another throat, finishing them off. Even as they try to swarm it, the creature just keeps mauling. It lets out another deafening roar in the middle of the carnage. A dying goblin's red eye reflects the beast's fury. Blood splatters everywhere as the last of them falls. The creature pauses, looking around at the quiet room. A system window pops up, granting citizenship for clearing the threats. The massive form begins to shrink and shift. The fur recedes, revealing a human face underneath. Oh Yeonju looks completely drained as her transformation ends. She collapses onto the floor, surrounded by the corpses she left behind. Jaehyun has been watching the entire spectacle from the shadows. He looks out over the basement at the absolute mess she made. The girl is out cold, her energy totally spent. Jaehyun checks her stats and sees she's level 33 with an A-rank warbear skill. He's genuinely impressed by what he's found. This is exactly the kind of power he needs to recruit. But first, he pulls up his own menu to finalize another registration. He officially registers Kang Deoksu as his third vassal, giving him the Iron Knight ability. Jaehyun starts thinking about how the vassal system actually works. Choi Hyungjin is only level 20 with a C-rank gorilla strength ability. Then there's Kang Deoksu at level 25 with his B-rank skill. And Moon Byung-go is currently the highest at level 30 with an A-rank teleport. He looks at the three of them, trying to spot a pattern in their stats. He wonders if the ability ranks are just assigned at random. It doesn't seem to correlate with how much they trust him. Since Deoksu got a B rank while Hyungjin has higher loyalty but a lower rank. Jaehyun ponders the mystery of what exactly determines the rank of an ability. Since he's capped at 10 vassals, every single slot needs to be filled by someone with high potential. He worries about the complications that might come with registering a metahuman. He steps out of the elevator, his mind already moving to the next task. Heading down in the lift, he prepares to face whatever is waiting in the basement. He activates his ultimate eyes, the world sharpening through his glowing gaze. In the depths of B2, Oh Yeonju lies unconscious amidst a graveyard of goblins. Jaehyun turns away, his scouting mission finished for now. Back on the 30th floor, Choi Hyungjin is waiting anxiously by the elevator. The doors slide open with a quiet chime. Jaehyun gives a brief, direct order. Go down to B2 and bring the girl back up. Soon the team is down in the basement, hauling heavy cables through the mess. They stare at the carnage, shocked by the amount of blood in the hallway. Moon Byung-go and Kang Deoksu discuss the weirdly aggressive swarm of goblins that hit them. Deoksu realizes just how powerful Jaehyun's abilities must be to stay so calm. Looking at the aftermath, he's certain their leader is on a completely different level. Deoksu stays quiet, but the unease is visible in his expression. Back at the safe zone, the other survivors are gathered around a table. Hyungjin beams as he mentions that Jaehyun even managed to get them warm water. The news hits them like a miracle. It's a luxury they never thought they'd see again. One of the women explains that it's all possible because of the supplies Jaehyun provides. To them, his ability to provide food and comfort in this hellscape is nothing short of incredible. Meanwhile, Byung-go is hard at work, helping to clean and secure the lower floors. He used to be shy and introverted, but since joining Jaehyun, he's become a different man. He hauls the thick wiring, aware that his own power is something most people would fear. The elevator indicator shows it descending back toward the basement. Hyunjin rushes out as soon as the doors open, eager to follow orders. He finds Yeonju among the monsters, knowing that being chosen by Jaehyun is their only ticket to survival. Jaehyun remains focused, his eyes reflecting his cold, calculated resolve. He'll do whatever it takes to ensure they make it through this nightmare. Somewhere in her mind, a child's hand pushes a toy truck across the ground. It's a sunny day at the playground, a memory from a world that's long gone. The little boy laughs as he plays, completely carefree. He looks up at his mom, his face bright with joy as he calls out to her. Yeonju smiles back, cherishing this simple, happy moment. But then her smile vanishes, replaced by a look of sheer terror. She gasps, the memory warping into a horrific nightmare before her eyes. Massive goblins emerge from the shadows behind the unsuspecting child. Yeonju screams and lunges forward, desperate to save her son. The boy freezes in fear as the dark, clawed hands reach for him. Tears stream down her face as the trauma of that day plays out once more. All that's left is the toy truck, lying abandoned and stained with blood in the dark. Oh, Yeonju bolts upright in her bed, her breath catching as she wakes from a horrific nightmare. Jaehyun stands nearby, calling out her name in a calm, measured voice. He watches her silently, letting her regain her bearings after the shock of waking up. Still overwhelmed, she clutches her head and tries to steady her ragged breathing. Jaehyun introduces himself formally, his expression unreadable and distant. She looks up at him with wide, bloodshot eyes and asks if he was the one who did it. He tilts his head slightly, not immediately catching her meaning. She clarifies, asking if he was responsible for sending the goblins' heads flying in the basement. Jaehyun pauses for a moment, his hand stopping as he considers his response. He looks away and confirms it, admitting that he was indeed the one behind the massacre. Yeonju stares at him, her face pale as she processes the sheer magnitude of his strength. She thinks about how terrifyingly powerful he is, capable of wiping out an entire swarm in an instant. Her gaze falls to the bedsheets as a desperate, impossible idea begins to take root. She clasps her hands together as if in prayer, her body still trembling from the cold. She wonders if a man with his level of power could actually achieve the impossible. A single teardrop falls from her eye, a silent testament to the grief she's been carrying. Jaehyun remains silent, observing the internal struggle playing out on her face. Finally, she breaks down completely and begs him to save her son. She pleads for just one more day with him, her voice barely a whisper through her tears. She hides her face in her hands, her heart breaking all over again as she cries out for him. Jaehyun realizes that she must have lost her child to the goblins during the initial chaos. The room is filled with the sound of her raw, agonizing sobs as she mourns. He watches her for a long moment before asking if there is anything he can actually do. He sits back and thinks it over, his mind searching through his unique abilities for a solution. He wonders if a miracle like resurrection is even a possibility within his system. A blue window pops up, but it coldly informs him that the quest cannot be granted. He closes his eyes, thinking that bringing the dead back to life is truly an impossibility. But then his eyes snap open in genuine shock as a new notification appears. He stares at the glowing text, his heart starting to race with a sudden wild hope. He realizes that he can actually revive a person, provided he has enough money to pay for it. The sounds of Yeonju's broken sniffling are the only thing that breaks the silence of the room. Jaehyun looks down at her, frustrated that he doesn't know the exact cost of the resurrection yet. He remains focused, his mind already calculating how to gather the necessary resources. He calls out to her again, waiting for her to look up through her tear-blurred vision. He tells her directly that he believes he can help her after all. Yeonju is stunned into silence as he suggests that bringing her son back might be possible. She looks at him with a mix of hope and disbelief, asking if he truly means it. He tempers her expectations, explaining that while it's possible, it can't be done immediately. He looks her straight in the eye and confirms that it is a definite goal for the future. Filled with a new burning purpose, she tells him she'll do absolutely anything he requires of her. Jaehyun reviews the strength of the survivors, noting the high levels of the party members. He concludes that the most efficient path forward is to bring all 7 awakened individuals under his control as vassals. Jaehyun smiles at Yeonju, telling her that it's time to get up and meet the others. He extends a hand to help her, promising to introduce her to the rest of the survivors. Ha-dongin steps forward and introduces himself to the newcomer with a friendly, open expression. He looks at Yeonju with interest, asking if she's the legendary survivor who hunted goblins with a baseball. Dongin continues the introductions, gesturing to the members of his party, including their skilled bow user. The bow user in the purple tracksuit is startled, wondering how Jaehyun could already know so much about them. Yeonju lets out a playful growl, asking the group if they've already forgotten their meeting in the basement. Ha-dongin and the others exchange confused glances, unable to recognize the girl standing before them. A confident smirk plays on Yeonju's lips as she prepares to reveal her true identity to the group. Wisps of dark, magical energy begin to emanate from her body as she initiates her transformation. Her features begin to blur and expand as the powerful Werebear ability takes hold of her human form. The bow user screams in surprise, pointing a finger as she finally realizes who she is looking at. A massive glowing black bear fills the room, and Dongin realizes this is the beast that saved them in the basement. The bear chuckles and speaks, clarifying that while she might look like a monster, she is a bear on their side. Ha-dongin is left speechless, finally connecting the mysterious protector to the girl standing before him. Yeonju tells the group that their meeting was destiny, and that any enemy of the goblins is a friend of hers. Jaehyun watches the group from the side, satisfied to see his survivors finally coming together as a team. He steps into the center of the room and announces that he has an important update for everyone. Jaehyun lays out the plan for the following morning, declaring they will move to save Byung-go's grandmother. The atmosphere in the room turns solemn as the survivors focus on the dangerous mission ahead of them. He explains that Hyeongjin will be sidelined by his injuries, having already donated his bed to Yeonju for her recovery. Jaehyun adds that Yeonju will take Hyeongjin's place, and the bear form girl laughs as she pledges her support. He concludes the meeting, telling everyone to get some sleep before they head out at the break of dawn. The survivors answer with a unified shout, their spirits lifted and their resolve hardened for the coming battle. Jaehyun has that look on his face again, and it's never a good sign for anyone else. Moon Byung-go and Kang Deoksu are practically vibrating with nerves, wondering if this is finally about the new powers they just got. The boss just gives them a sharp smirk and tells them they're spot on. These two are definitely not ready for whatever trial he has in mind. The tension in the room is thick enough to cut. Byung-go looks like he just heard his name called for the grand prize. Deoksu's all in, ready to see what he's actually capable of doing. Jaehyun's gaze is locked on, analyzing every little reaction from his new team. He pulls up the system interface to start the real work. Time to see what the stats are really saying about his underlings. He's looking for every advantage he can find in the data. Deoksu's grinning like a madman, clearly feeling a surge of confidence. The leader asks him straight up what this Iron Knight skill is all about. Blue energy starts flaring up around him as he starts his transformation. Deoksu lets out a roar as he forces the skill to activate. Jaehyun just stands there, completely unbothered by the pressure. The feedback is so intense that Byung-go's nearly knocked off his feet. Something big is finally happening. Byung-go's eyes go wide as he sees the power manifesting before him. He's absolutely hyped now. The boy drops into a deep bow, showing total respect to his leader. He's sweating bullets, but the determination is clear as day. He just stands over him with his arms crossed, waiting for him to finish. Jaehyun warns him that having a skill is one thing, but if he can't control it, it's useless. That definitely brings the mood back down to earth. Byung-go takes it to heart and nods, ready to do whatever it takes. Sparks of energy start dancing around the muscular man again. A massive dark shadow of an armored warrior looms behind him. He's completely focused now, letting the power take hold. Boom! Deoksu is suddenly decked out in full silver plate armor, holding a massive spear. He can't believe it actually worked. Then Jaehyun turns his attention to the other one. He points out the window toward a building way in the distance. The instruction is simple. Get over to that roof right now. Byung-go gulps and gives a quick nod. No turning back now. The armored knight gives him a supportive pat on the back that probably nearly crushed a rib. He closes his eyes and starts channeling everything he's got. A blinding pillar of light erupts as he initiates the teleport. And just like that, he vanishes into thin air. The two left behind lean out the window to see if he made the jump. Sure enough, there he is on the roofway across the street, waving back. The boss lets out a small sigh of relief. One step closer to his goal. Byung-go is waving like a lunatic. Exhausted but absolutely thrilled that he pulled it off. Byung-go looks like he's about to collapse after that teleport. He's completely drained, and the knight behind him can see the toll it took. Jaehyun reaches out, purple energy sparking from his hand. He's using his summoning skill to pull his exhausted vassal back to safety. The kid just hits the floor like a sack of bricks. Next thing he knows, he's tucked into a real bed, finally getting some rest. While he recovers, the other two are checking the system to make sure he's actually okay. The screen confirms he's just sleeping and in good health. Deoksu looks up at the boss, probably waiting for his own marching orders. He drops down, his heavy armored gauntlet hitting the floor with a thud. This isn't just a rest stop. It's time for some serious training. He starts cranking out push-ups, the weight of that full plate armor making every rep a nightmare. The floor is practically groaning under the pressure of the exercise. He's gritting his teeth, pushing himself to the absolute limit. Byung-go finally wakes up and sees the literal mountain of iron putting in the work. Jaehyun pulls up another screen to see the results of this torture. He's watching the numbers climb, looking pretty satisfied. Deoksu finally takes a break, huffing and puffing while asking if they're done yet. The protagonist just gives him a small, knowing smile. He watches the knight's back as he walks away. Something feels different though. Dark energy starts swirling around his own hands. He's stunned to see that his own strength is actually going up. A calculating smirk spreads across his face as he realizes how this works. If his vassals get stronger, he gets stronger without even lifting a finger. He's practically gloating at this point. Cut to the streets of Busan, and it's a total disaster zone with everyone running for their lives from a horde of goblins. Deoksu is leading the charge, looking like a tank on two legs. He's got that fire in his eyes now. The green-skinned monsters are everywhere, snarling and ready for a meal. The knight swings his massive polearm in a wide arc. He catches a goblin right in the chest, sending a spray of blood into the air. He lets out a war cry that echoes through the alleyway. These things don't stand a chance as he cleaves right through them. The sound of goblin screams fills the air. One of them snarls back, but it's clearly outmatched. He's a whirlwind of steel, cutting down anything that gets too close. Bodies are dropping left and right as he clears the path. He's loving every second of this, gritting his teeth as he pushes forward. Byung-go is right behind him, keeping his eyes peeled for any stragglers. Deoksu lets out a laugh, enjoying the absolute carnage. A fresh wave of goblins gathers, but they look a lot more nervous now. Deoksu stands tall in his heavy armor, overlooking the urban chaos as he prepares for the next wave. The goblins are absolutely sweating, realizing they're in way over their heads against this iron wall. A massive, glowing-eyed bear looms over the monsters like a literal nightmare manifest. One of the creatures lets out a shrill scream as it realizes that death is standing right behind it. Byung-go provides cover with his bow while the knight cleaves through the front line with a glowing blade. It's a complete bloodbath, with the shadowy bear and the knight tearing through the goblin ranks. Deoksu grits his teeth, relishing the chance to finally cut loose with his full power. Byung-go pauses for a second, catching his breath amidst the absolute carnage of the battlefield. "Go to your grandmother," the knight bellows, giving the kid a rare moment of compassion during the fight. Byung-go doesn't need to be told twice, sprinting away from the alley as fast as his legs can carry him. Back in his room, Jaehyun is casually slurping down cup ramen while keeping an eye on the progress. He blinks in surprise when a notification pops up. He's getting cash as a reward for his vassal's hard work. He wonders if the bonuses are random, or if it's tied to the specific difficulty of the quest. It makes sense that the rewards are better given how much he's been pushing Deoxys lately. Alrighty, time to open up the rest of the rewards, he mutters with a mouthful of noodles. Purple energy flares up as he claims his prizes, a dark, satisfied look crossing his pale face. He looks up from his meal, his attention drawn back to the live feed of his team. The scene shifts to Byung-go, who is a blurred streak of motion as he races through the quiet streets. He's drenched in sweat, his heart hammering against his ribs from the physical and emotional strain. He finally reaches the humble traditional house he hasn't seen in far too long. He throws open the door, the loud creak echoing through the empty courtyard. His footsteps thud heavily against the wooden floorboards as he rushes toward the back room. Byung-go bursts in, his chest heaving as he frantically searches the dim space. He finds what he's looking for and stops dead in his tracks, his eyes widening with relief and fear. His grandmother is lying there, looking frail and still under her heavy floral quilt. He drops to his knees beside her, his voice trembling as he calls out to her. He reaches out, his hand shaking as he gently touches her shoulder, praying for a response. Her eyes slowly flutter open, and she looks up at him with a weak smile of disbelief. The dam finally breaks, and the young man starts sobbing right there by her bedside. He pulls her into a tight, desperate hug, burying his face in her shoulder as if to shield her from the world. He grips her tightly, the sound of his ragged sobs filling the small, quiet room. Tears stream down his face, the immense weight he's been carrying finally starting to lift. Jaehyun watches the emotional reunion through the system screen, his expression softening slightly. He covers his mouth in thought, realizing that a vassal's happiness is just another form of his own power. Jaehyun's ultimate eyes are wide open, and he's staring at a massive number on the screen. Meanwhile, down in the hallway, a couple of familiar faces are hanging around outside his door. It's Kim Dabin and Kim Miho, and they definitely didn't come empty-handed. The manager spots them and immediately stops what she's doing. She opens the door, letting the cold air from the hallway into the warm apartment. Dabin looks relieved just to be greeted so warmly for once. Miho, on the other hand, just looks like he wants to get this over with. The manager is taken aback when she sees just how much they've brought along. Back in his room, Jaehyun is frantically tapping through the system menus. He can't believe it. The system is asking for 100 million won just for a single upgrade. He slams his hand on the table and grabs his hair, wondering where he's supposed to get that kind of cash. Even with a system, money is still the biggest hurdle in this world. He looks up, hearing the commotion in the next room getting louder. Dabin is basically pleading for just one chance to use the shower. The manager listens as Dabin explains just how rough things are out in the hallway. Dabin is sweating, her face full of desperation after surviving on nothing for so long. She starts venting about the lack of water, clearly having reached her breaking point. The manager just gives her a blank stare, totally overwhelmed by the sudden outburst. Dabin pauses for a second, asking if that's really all she needs to do to get in. The manager just laughs it off and leads them further into the apartment. Miho follows behind, still lugging that heavy box along. He drops it onto the floor with a loud thud-looking beat. It's filled to the brim with high-quality canned goods, a literal gold mine. Dabin is just ecstatic to be in a place that feels like a real home for a minute. But then she notices something in the corner of the living room. There's a whole rack of bows and baseball bats just sitting there like it's nothing. She points it out, totally shocked at the amount of weaponry they have lying around. The manager just smiles and laughs, acting like it's the most normal thing in the world. Jaehyun overhears them from across the room, his mind already spinning with new ideas. He realizes that if he wants to grow his power, he needs more than just money. He walks over to the window and looks out at the city skyline. The world outside is a mess, but every building is a potential addition to his empire. Suddenly, a high-priority alert window flashes right in front of him. His expression darkens instantly as he reads the notification text. One of his fighters is spitting up blood, looking completely spent. Ha Dongin and the rest of the crew are back, but they're all covered in blood. They managed to kill a massive red tiger, but the victory came at a heavy price. Jaehyun looks down, feeling the weight of the situation. His eyes flare up with Hat Kai as his anger starts to boil over. He's not about to let his best people just die after all that hard work. He pulls up the system menu and barks out an order to offer citizenship immediately. He grits his teeth, determined to reach the 50 resident milestone before it's too late. Choi Hyungjin is caught in a desperate struggle, barely holding on as someone clings to him in terror. The rest of the team isn't faring much better. Yeonju and Deoksu are pushed to their limits in the middle of the carnage. Jaehyun watches the entire thing unfold from his monitor, his expression hardening as he sees the toll the fight is taking. It's a complete bloodbath out there, with goblins swarming the group from every side. Every second is a battle for survival, as they try to push back the tide of monsters. Yeonju is covered in blood, her face twisted in a mix of exhaustion and pure grit. Ha-dongin and the others are barely holding the line, looking down at the mess they've had to fight through. Jaehyun pulls up a system window, checking the live status of his struggling crew. He looks over his roster of vassals, realizing that while they're strong, they're still just human. Hyungjin is laughing through the blood on his face, probably just ecstatic that they actually made it out alive. Jaehyun's eyes glow with a dark, intense light as he realizes he needs more than just brute force. Kim Gaeong and Yeonju are right in the thick of it, their faces splattered with blood as they hunt for an opening. A pack of goblins looms over them, sensing that the group is starting to flag. Gaeong doesn't hesitate for a second, pulling her bow back as a monster lunges forward. She releases an arrow of pure light that streaks through the dark hallway. The blast tears through the goblin ranks, giving the team a much-needed moment to regroup. She shouts out, pushing past her injuries to keep the pressure on. Jaehyun watches the report finish, his mind already moving on to the next problem. They need a healer, and they need one now if they're going to survive the next mission. He uses his ultimate eyes to scan the surrounding apartments, looking for anyone with medical skills. He stops and thinks, his mind running through the stats of the survivors in the building. He locks onto a target, a nurse trapped in an apartment, her vitals dropping by the second. He projects his awareness down the hallway toward the room he's identified. The apartment is eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the violence happening just a few floors away. Inside, a hand fumbles with an empty water bottle, but there's not a single drop left. The place is completely barren, with nothing but empty bowls and wrappers left behind. Jaehyun's eyes narrow as he stands outside the door, focusing his intent on the lock. He can see her through the wall, Kim Dae-jung lying still as she waits for the end. He doesn't waste a second and starts sprinting toward the room. She's just lying there on the floor, her body shutting down from extreme thirst. Jaehyun shouts out, trying to get her attention even though the door is deadbolt shut. He reaches room 2902, the only thing standing between him and his new healer. He can hear the chain rattling on the other side as he tries the handle. He peers through the crack, seeing just how desperate the situation is inside. He focuses his energy, his eyes locking onto the metal chain holding the door. He manifests his invisible hand skill, a glowing ethereal limb appearing in the air. He lets out a sharp nice, as the skill connects perfectly with the lock. With a sudden snap, the ethereal hand shatters the door handle from the inside. He manifests the skill into a set of glowing bolt cutters, ready to finish the job. The ethereal tool clamps down on the chain and snips through the heavy metal like it's paper. He kicks the door the rest of the way open and rushes into the dark room. He finds Kim Dae-jung on the floor, pale and motionless, and he knows he has to act right now. Jaehyun kneels over Kim Dae-jung's limp form, his face etched with worry as he checks her pulse. He grits his teeth, the physical and mental strain of the rescue mission finally beginning to show. Her eyes are closed tight, her face a mask of exhaustion and dehydration. He looks around the silent apartment, realizing she's been trapped here for days without help. A bead of sweat rolls down his face as he prepares to use the system's healing capabilities. He looks at the girl lying on the floor, surrounded by empty water bottles that tell a tragic story. Jaehyun activates a support skill, and a holographic window glows faintly in front of him. A surge of blue energy flows into Dae-jung, the system's intervention stabilizing her critical condition. Slowly, the world begins to come back into focus for the starving nurse. Her eyes flutter open, though they're heavy and unfocused as she regains consciousness. He speaks to her in a calm voice, introducing himself as the neighbor from the apartment above. Dejung stares up at him in a daze, her mind struggling to make sense of his presence. Tears begin to trail down her pale cheeks as the shock of being saved finally hits her. She lets out a broken sob, covering her eyes as she breaks down in pure, overwhelming relief. Jaehyun watches her with a steady gaze, his mind already calculating the next steps to ensure her recovery. He calls her by name, Kim Dejung, letting her know that she's no longer just another face in the darkness. She slowly lowers her hands, her eyes searching his face for any sign that this is real. Her expression is one of pure devastation and hope, a fragile mix of emotions after so much suffering. She looks at him with wide, trembling eyes, her breath catching in her throat. She can hardly believe that someone came for her, let alone someone who knows her name. Her hand shakes violently as she reaches out, her strength still barely returning. She manages to sit up, though she looks as though a stiff breeze could knock her over. Jaehyun checks the system display one last time to confirm that her vitals are out of the danger zone. His eyes are sharp and focused, the ultimate eyes scanning the digital data before him. He keeps the screen active, perhaps letting her see the miracle that just occurred. Dejung looks at the glowing interface, her brow furrowing in confusion at the strange technology. He reaches into his inventory and drops a handful of fresh tangerines onto the floor between them. Her jaw drops as she stares at the fruit, a sight she never thought she'd see again in this world. She looks up at Jaehyun, her face contorted with a mix of shock and desperate hunger. He gives her a rare, gentle smile, a silent assurance that the worst of the nightmare is over. He watches as she looks down at the tangerines, the sheer weight of his kindness starting to sink in. With a trembling hand, she reaches for one of the fruits, her tears still falling freely. She clutches the tangerine to her chest, looking at him as if he were a savior sent from heaven. Jaehyun stands up and begins to pace through the apartment, giving her space to recover. He keeps his eyes on the status window, watching her loyalty to him grow with every passing second. He walks toward the balcony, his footsteps echoing softly in the quiet, dusty room. He stands at the railing, looking out over the city with a renewed sense of purpose and power. Jaehyun's eyes narrow as he watches the carnage. He's standing out on the balcony, looking down at the courtyard. A second red tiger is tearing through the residence as they scramble for cover. In the middle of the panic, Hyeon's foot slips. She goes down hard on the pavement. Kim Gaeong looks back, seeing her friend in immediate danger. Hyeon tries to scramble up, but her legs won't move fast enough. Gaeong screams out in horror. The beast is right there, looming over her with its jaws wide open. Hyeon looks up, completely paralyzed as death stares her in the face. The tiger lunges for the kill. Suddenly, a purple glow wraps around her and jerks her away. The tiger's teeth snap shut on nothing but empty air. Hyeon gasps as she's yanked backward at high speed. She flies through the air and lands right inside Jaehyun's apartment. The shut-in looks down at his unexpected guest. She collapses on the floor, shivering from the sheer shock of it. Down in the courtyard, the rest of the group is still running for their lives. Jaehyun watches the scene unfold from his safe haven. Ha-dongin grabs an elderly man to keep him from falling behind. The shut-in turns his attention back to the fight outside. He's not about to let his potential recruits get eaten. Dongin shields the man behind him. The red tiger isn't giving up the hunt. Jaehyun readies his invisible hand to step in again. The monster leaps at the fleeing group. Dongin prepares to take a stand. He digs his heels into the asphalt. He winds up for a pitch like he's back on the mound. A baseball glows with intense blue energy in his hand. He hurls the ball straight at the monster's face. The tiger charges right through the impact. It lets out a roar that shakes the entire apartment complex. Kim Gaeong screams at him to get out of there. The beast is inches away from tearing him apart. Dongin grits his teeth, refusing to budge an inch. He rolls out of the way just as the claws strike the ground. He stays right in the tiger's face to keep its attention on him. The monster prepares for another lunge. Its massive jaws are wide enough to swallow him whole. Dongin looks back at the beast. He grits his teeth, prepared to go down swinging. The monster's eye dilates as its world suddenly turns upside down. Just as it's about to lunge, a purple collar of energy snaps around its neck. Jaehyun's invisible hand forms a massive X, pinning the beast in midair. Its claws scrape uselessly against the air as it's hoisted up. The tiger thrashes, but the energy collar is completely immovable. Ha Dongin stares up in disbelief. He was sure he was a goner. Behind him, the other survivors watch the impossible spectacle. Kim Gaeong seizes the moment and readies her bow. She narrows her eyes, focusing every bit of her remaining mana. The massive beast is left dangling helplessly in the middle of the parking lot. From the balcony above, Jaehyun watches his trap close shut. Gaeong draws her string back, and a blue magical light begins to swirl. The tiger lets out a strangled roar, unable to break its bonds. With a sharp exhale, she releases the killing shot. A blinding streak of blue energy tears straight through the monster. Jaehyun smirks as the system confirms the kill and a massive loot drop. Once the danger passes, Kim Dae-jung gets straight to work on the wounded. Her hands glow with a warm light as she starts healing Dongin's injury. He lets out a breath of relief as the pain finally starts to recede. Jaehyun stands over them, his presence heavy and authoritative. He looks Dongin in the eye and tells him he's officially part of the team. The athlete bows his head, accepting his new role with total loyalty. Jaehyun's eyes remain cold. He's building a kingdom, not a sanctuary. The building looks peaceful enough from the outside, but the atmosphere has shifted. Down in the courtyard, the monster's paw lies limp on the pavement. Jaehyun checks his balance. He just made a fortune in a matter of seconds. Dae-jung wipes the sweat from her brow, exhausted but relieved. She looks at her new leader, feeling safe for the first time since the world ended. Nearby, Choi Hyungjin watches the exchange with a nervous smile. He's practically shaking with relief that the nightmare is finally over. Jaehyun turns to the rest of the survivors, his expression unreadable. A few of the residents are already starting to celebrate their narrow escape. They're cheering like the war is over, but Jaehyun is about to ruin the mood. Kim Dabin looks on with a mixture of fear and awe at their savior. Jaehyun cuts through the noise with a blunt, serious announcement. He makes it clear that staying on his floors comes with a price. The crowd goes dead silent as he starts laying out the new rules of the complex. He has plenty of rooms, but they're reserved for those who contribute. His gaze is hard. He's not running a charity and everyone has to work. Dabin and the others exchange nervous glances, realizing their lives just changed. He issues a challenge. The first group to kill 100 goblins gets a private apartment. Dongin and Gaeong look determined. The hunt is officially on. Kim Dabin stands with one of the residents, watching the chaos from a safe distance. High above, Jaehyun's sharp gaze misses nothing. He's the architect of this brutal trial. His presence looms over the survivors like a god, a silent reminder of who truly holds the power in this new world. Meanwhile, down in the parking garage, the hunt is proving to be a nightmare for those who aren't prepared. A pack of snarling goblins is hot on the trail of a group of terrified residents. The young man in the red jacket is at his limit, his lungs burning as he tries to outrun the green-skinned monsters. He finally reaches the heavy security doors, his last hope for a moment of safety. He practically throws himself through the entrance as the sound of claws scraping the concrete grows louder. Gasping for air, he screams out in a mix of terror and sheer exhaustion. But not everyone is struggling. Another group has found their rhythm in the slaughter. Sunjiob's team is systematic, picking off the goblins through the gates with cold efficiency. They use the terrain to their advantage, keeping the monsters at bay with long improvised spears. A goblin is sent flying as the group pushes forward, their confidence growing with every kill. For them, this isn't a desperate fight for survival. It's a game they intend to dominate. The basement level is slick with green blood as they steadily rack up their kill count. They move through the parking garage like a well-oiled machine, leaving a trail of corpses in their wake. Sunjiob leads the pack with a cocky smirk, clearly enjoying the authority his power provides. He's a natural killer, his eyes filled with a predatory light as he scouts for the next target. A sudden violent slash of blue energy cuts through the darkness of the garage. Another goblin falls, its body struck down by a single precise blow. Sunjiob pauses to boast, his arrogance growing as he feels his team's lead is insurmountable. He checks in with his followers, confident that no other team can match their ruthless pace. One of his teammates is shocked by how many monsters they've managed to slaughter in such a short time. In the background, the man in the red jacket watches them with a hollow, defeated expression. He can't believe how much harder the hunt is than what was promised. The realization that he might lose out on a safe room is starting to sink in. Sunjiab ignores the weaker man, smoothing back his red hair with a dismissive, arrogant gesture. He has no patience for those who can't keep up with his standards. The man in the red jacket tries to protest, desperate to keep his team in the competition. Sunjiab stops and turns, his shadow falling heavily over the other resident. One of Sunjiab's lackeys holds the man back, finding his desperate pleading to be a source of entertainment. The group laughs in his face, mocking his struggle while Sunjiab remains stoic and cold. The man in the red jacket can only grit his teeth, the unfairness of the New World Order eating at him. The elites of the complex head back upstairs to report their successful hunt. They are met by Kim Dabin, who greets them at the desk with a calm, professional smile. But whatever news she delivers isn't what Sunjiab was expecting to hear. His smug expression instantly vanishes, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He leans in close to her face, his gaze turning predatory as he tries to intimidate her. Losing his temper completely, he grabs Dabin by her hoodie and pulls her toward him. A crowd begins to gather in the hallway, sensing the escalating tension between the resident and the manager. Dabin looks back at the group with a mix of surprise and pity, refusing to be cowed by his brute force. Sunjiab is fuming. He thought he was the master of this floor, but his authority is clearly being challenged. Kong Deoksu and the other residents look on with triumphant smiles, their presence a silent mockery of Sunjiab's failed dominance as the first stage of the trial comes to an end. Footsteps pound against the pavement as a frantic chase begins. Sunjiab and his group are running for their lives with a pack of orcs right on their heels. They push themselves to the limit, barely keeping ahead of the green monsters. Sunjiab risks a look back, his face twisted in terror as the giants close the gap. But someone is already waiting for the monsters further down the street. Ha-Dongin watches the chaos unfold, staying completely cool under the pressure. He gets into a professional throwing stance, blue energy starting to gather around his spear. He narrows his eyes, focusing every bit of his power into his throwing arm. The spear hurls through the air, looking more like a blue comet than a weapon. It slams into an orc with enough force to send a shockwave rippling through the alley. Another beast comes charging out of the shadows, swinging its weapon wildly. The monster looms over him, but Dongin doesn't even flinch. He draws another spear, and a brilliant blue aura flares up around him. The orc lets out a pained roar as the attack connects with brutal precision. Kim Gaeong provides cover from the side, drawing her bow to keep the other monsters at bay. The fighter looks back briefly, making sure the survivors have made it to safety. He finishes the job with a series of quick, decisive strikes that put the last of the beasts down. He exhales sharply, standing amidst the carnage as the danger finally passes. The survivors just stare in disbelief, unable to process the incredible strength they just witnessed. Dongin wipes some sweat off his forehead and gives them a confident smirk. Back at the building, Jaehyun watches as the total number of residents finally hits a big milestone. He checks the system screens closely, his eyes reflecting the blue interface. Since they've hit exactly 200 people, he grants them all citizenship immediately. The system updates showing his population count and a massive new bag of funds. His excitement dies down when he sees the insane price tags on the new building features. He starts to sweat, realizing he's going to need a lot more than just a few million won. He navigates through the windows, searching for any way to fund his expansion plans. He grits his teeth, worried that his progress might be stalled by the budget. Suddenly, the entire apartment building hums with energy as a new system feature unlocks. He stares at the screen in disbelief, stunned by the notification popping up. He nearly shouts when he sees a 1 billion won construction subsidy granted by the system. He doesn't waste a second, immediately installing solar panels on the roof to secure their power. He stands in his room with his arms crossed, finally able to think about long-term growth. He focuses on the construction menu, his mind already 3 steps ahead. A sly grin spreads across his face as he realizes how much easier his life is about to get. He brings up the menu again, selecting a new building option with confidence. He looks at the choices with a serious business-like expression. He taps the icon to build an automated store right inside the building. He waits for the system to process the command, feeling the weight of the work lifting. The store icon glows bright blue, signaling that the facility is officially open. Before this, his team had to spend all day manually lugging supplies to the residents. But with the new store, people can just head to the terminal and buy whatever they need themselves. Jaehyun sits back, contemplating just how much his little empire has grown in such a short time. He looks up, the heavy weight of leadership finally starting to show on his face. He looks down at the blood-stained floor, a grim reminder of the cost of surviving this apocalypse. A slow, determined grin spreads across his face as he realizes his current path is the only way forward. He snaps back to reality, his mind already racing with the next set of upgrades he needs to implement. He points his finger toward the system interface, ready to dive back into the building's logistics. He focuses his full attention on the automated store's inventory management screen. The display shifts to the beverage section, starting with the most basic necessity for any survivor, water. He narrows his eyes, carefully scanning the different brands and quantities available for purchase. He scrolls through the list, seeing familiar names like Samdasu and Aquafina pop up on the glowing blue display. He moves on to the food section, looking a bit overwhelmed by the sheer variety of instant meals. The menu is packed with every kind of noodle imaginable, from spicy jampong to rich sesame flavors. He gives a satisfied smirk, resting his hand on his chin as he admires his well-stocked fortress. Meanwhile, out in the ruined streets, Ha-Dongin is leading a fierce counterattack against the monsters. He cuts through the chaos, his silver armor glinting as he clashes with the green-skinned beasts. He deflects a heavy blow with his shield, his combat movements working in perfect harmony. With a powerful sweep of his blade, he cleaves through an orc, leaving a trail of blood in the air. After the intense skirmish, Dongin stops to catch his breath, his knightly armor covered in grime and blood. He hears someone approaching from behind and quickly turns, his hand staying firmly on his weapon. A man in a baseball uniform, Kong Deoksu, walks up and asks to borrow one of his heavy spears. Deoksu grips the weapon, testing its weight as if he were preparing to throw a baseball. A blue aura erupts around him as he winds up for the pitch, his eyes glowing with a destructive power.
Ha-Dongin slams his weapon down, dealing a finishing blow to the orc. The summoned knight follows through with a surge of blue energy. The knight lets out a guttural roar, finishing off the last of the monsters. Dongin watches with his arms crossed as the battle finally settles. The knight looks back, realization hitting him as his time runs out. Blue flames erupt as the summon begins to dissolve into particles. He vanishes back into the system, his mission complete for now. Dongin stands in the quiet alley, satisfied with the progress they've made. Somewhere else, Kim Gaeong reaches for an arrow, but her quiver is bone dry. She clenches her teeth, realizing she's defenseless against the next wave. Suddenly, a digital quiver flickers into existence right at her feet. She stares at the holographic aid in total disbelief. Realizing it's real, she reaches for the magical arrows. She doesn't waste a second, jumping back into the fray with a full supply. Back in safety, Jaehyun monitors the team's stats with a quiet confidence. He turns away from the blue screens, his mind already on the next phase. He steps out of his apartment, the door sliding shut behind him. The hallway is silent as he makes his way toward the elevator. He reaches the roof, his footsteps echoing on the concrete. He stops at the edge and looks out over the horizon. The city below is a nightmare of smoke and crumbling skyscrapers. The sight is a grim reminder of how much has been lost. He pulls up his system window to check the distance to his next goal. Miles away, Kim Jian waits silently with a crow perched on his arm. His other subordinates are pushing themselves to the absolute limit. Jaehyun taps his chin, weighing the risks and rewards. He narrows his eyes, focusing on the data flashing before him. A bead of sweat rolls down his face as he considers the difficulty ahead. He thinks of the son Oyeonju lost, a life he might actually be able to bring back. He reaches out and taps the confirm button on the screen. His expression hardens with a new sense of resolve. He can almost hear the woman's desperate pleas echoing in the silence. The weight of the responsibility sits heavy on his shoulders. Another system notification pops up, demanding an answer. He clenches his teeth, staring at the high-stakes mission. Without hesitation, he gives his final confirmation. A series of heavy thuds suddenly sound from outside his front door. Jaehyun walks over to see who's causing the commotion. As he unlocks the door, a hand reaches out from the other side. The door swings open, and a desperate woman falls toward him. Oyeonju collapses onto her knees, gasping for air. She looks up with tear-filled eyes, begging him for a miracle. Jaehyun stares down at the woman who just collapsed at his doorstep. She's on the floor, trembling and gasping for breath from sheer exhaustion. Oyeonju lets out a heart-wrenching sob, begging him to bring her child back. Jaehyun stands there in silence, taking in the raw desperation of her impossible request. He quickly puts on his strategist's mask, calculating the logistics of such a feat. He focuses on the system windows only he can see, searching for a way. A spark of energy flickers as he activates a building management skill. He turns his back on the room, his mind already 3 steps ahead of everyone else. He monitors the building's status, keeping a close eye on the resource consumption. A faucet drips in the kitchen, a reminder that every drop is precious in this new world. But with his maintain dignity skill, he restores the water flow to the entire building. He lets out a weary breath, the mental strain of management beginning to weigh on him. In his head, he's the grand architect, moving pieces on a giant high-stakes game board. A smug grin crosses his face as he sees the dividends of his control starting to pay off. Meanwhile, a dark presence watches from the shadows of the safe zone. The halls are bustling with residents who now rely on Jaehyun for their survival. Life is starting to resemble some form of normalcy again for the people in the building. But that normalcy comes at a steep price, one that he's more than happy to collect. The residents line up at the newly established store to buy their daily essentials. The store is a goldmine, turning survival into a profitable business for its manager. Out on the front lines, another orc is brutally dispatched with a single strike. With every monster killed, the money just keeps rolling into Jaehyun's account. He watches the numbers climb higher and higher, satisfied with the exponential growth. He knows this is only the beginning of his empire's expansion. Deep in the subway, a massive beast tears into a group of orc scavengers. Oyeonju has fully embraced her bear man form, biting down hard on a monster's neck. She's an absolute force of nature, ripping through flesh and bone with her primal strength. A spray of dark blood marks her victory as she clears the tunnel ahead. Her glowing red eyes betray the exhaustion buried under the transformation. The shift is taxing, but her motivation to see her son again is far stronger. She leaves nothing but carnage and broken monsters in her wake. After shifting back to human form, she stands exhausted, her white shirt stained with blood. She looks over her shoulder, checking on the rest of the scouting party behind her. They regroup and continue their trek through the dimly lit subway tracks. Kim De-jung walks alongside them, explaining her own reasons for pushing so hard. But their conversation is cut short by a terrifying presence lurking nearby. The air gets cold as the group realizes they aren't alone in this tunnel anymore. The tracks ahead disappear into a suffocating, unnatural darkness. A giant, leather-bound foot steps into view, shaking the very ground they stand on. The orc boss emerges from the shadows, ready to crush anything in its path.